Option 1. Hook Kai Mak, Bai Tuan Sin Tu Recommendi. Take all 5 of us. Nathan Cross stared at the 5 widows on his porch. Behind them, a monster was hunting. Before him, a choice that would define everything. 5 women, 1 man, and 20 killers riding at dawn. Some called it suicide. Nathan called it redemption. This is the story of how a broken soldier and 5 desperate women turned a lonely ranch into a fortress and rewrote the rules of justice in the Colorado Territory. It started with a simple offer. It ended with blood bullets and a family forged in fire. Take all 5 of us. Nathan Cross stood on the porch of the wooden house he had just inherited, staring at the dark-haired woman before him. Behind her stood 4 other women, 5 widows, 5 pairs of eyes that carried exhaustion but not surrender. He did not understand. Charlotte Reeves, the dark-haired woman, looked directly into his eyes with the determination of someone who had nothing left to lose. Mr. Cross, I know how my words sound, but we do not need charity. We need a roof and you need workers. The 5 of us will work for free for 1 year in exchange for shelter. Not a single penny. Nathan looked at the house, large empty since his brother died 3 years ago. 1 old man living in 8 empty rooms. Perhaps his brother had known this would happen. Perhaps this was the final legacy he left behind, not timber and land, but the chance to save what Nathan could not save before. "Where did you come from?" Nathan asked, his voice low and rough from years of little conversation. "From hell," Charlotte answered, "and we do not plan to go back." The 5 women stood in the morning light, their shadows long across the frost-covered ground. Each carried a worn traveling bag. Each wore clothes that had seen better days. But their backs were straight, their chins lifted. They were not begging, they were negotiating. Nathan studied them one by one. The redhead with fierce blue eyes who stood with arms crossed radiating defiance. The petite blonde who peered nervously from behind the others, hands twisting the fabric of her shawl. The brunette with calculating dark eyes who remained slightly apart, observing everything. The auburn-haired woman near the back, who stood with quiet strength, a maternal presence, despite her own evident weariness. And Charlotte, always Charlotte. The way she positioned herself, one arm slightly extended, as if to shield the 4 behind her, reminded him of something. Someone. The memory pierced his chest before he could stop it. Emma had stood like that once, protecting their daughter Lily from a spooked horse. That same fierce maternal stance, that same willingness to place herself between danger and those she loved. Nathan felt something shift inside him, something he had buried 8 years ago when he came home from hunting to find his wife and daughter cold in their bed, victims of the plague that had swept through the town while he was gone. He cleared his throat. 1 year, 1 year, Charlotte confirmed. We will maintain the property, cook, clean, tend the animals. You will not even know we are here. I will know, Nathan said quietly. This house has been silent for 3 years. 5 women will not be silent. A ghost of a smile touched Charlotte's lips. Then perhaps silence is not what you need, Mr. Cross. The words hung in the cold morning air. Nathan felt them settle into his bones like the ache of an old wound. He had believed silence was what he deserved. Punishment for failing to save Emma and Lily, penance for being alive when they were not. But standing here looking at 5 women who had clearly survived their own hell, he wondered if his brother Jeremiah had understood something Nathan did not. That silence was not penance. It was just another form of death. "Come inside," Nathan heard himself say. "We will discuss the terms." Charlotte's shoulders dropped slightly, relief she could not quite hide. "Thank you." As the 5 women filed past him into the house, Nathan caught the scent of lavender and wood smoke clinging to their clothes. The last time this house had smelled of anything but dust and loneliness was the day Jeremiah died. The day Nathan inherited a place too large for 1 man and too full of ghosts for comfort. He followed them inside, closing the door against the November chill. The fire in the hearth had burned down to embers. He had let it die, as he let most things die. What was the point of warmth for 1 man who felt nothing? But now there were 6 people in this room. and somehow impossibly the space felt less empty. Charlotte turned to face him, the other 4 women flanking her like soldiers awaiting orders. "We should introduce ourselves properly. I am Charlotte Reeves. This is Ruby Walsh, Sarah Quinn Vivian Hayes, and Grace Porter." Ruby the redhead gave a curt nod. Her jaw was set in a way that suggested she expected a fight and was prepared to give one. Sarah the blonde offered a timid smile that did not reach her eyes. She looked younger than the others, perhaps mid-20s, with the kind of fragility that came not from weakness but from too much pain too early. Vivian the brunette studied Nathan with an intensity that made him feel assessed and catalogued. She was a woman who missed nothing, who calculated every risk, who had learned the hard way that trust was earned, not given. Grace, the auburn-haired woman, met his gaze with calm directness. She was older than the others, perhaps in her early 40s, with the bearing of someone who had seen the worst life could offer and had decided to keep living anyway. "Nathan Cross," he said simply. "I inherited this ranch from my brother Jeremiah 3 years ago." At the mention of Jeremiah's name, something passed between the 5 women. A look, a shared knowledge. Charlotte's eyes flickered with what might have been grief or guilt or both. "You knew him," Nathan said. It was not a question. Charlotte hesitated, then nodded. "Yes. Jeremiah helped us when no one else would." The words raised more questions than they answered, but Nathan let them stand. He gestured toward the kitchen. "You must be hungry. There is not much, but I can make coffee." "Thank you," Grace said quietly. "That would be kind." As Nathan moved toward the stove, he was acutely aware of 5 pairs of eyes watching his every movement. He was not used to being observed. For 3 years he had lived like a ghost in his own home, performing the basic functions of survival without thought or purpose. Wake, eat, work, sleep, repeat. But now, as he measured coffee grounds and pumped water from the indoor cistern his brother had installed, he felt the weight of their attention. It made him self-conscious in a way he had not been since Emma died. Made him aware of the dust on the shelves, the cobwebs in the corners, the general air of neglect that had settled over everything like ash. The house was large, built by Jeremiah over the course of a decade. 8 bedrooms upstairs, a spacious kitchen and living area below a study that Nathan had not entered since moving in, and a cellar for storage. More than enough room for 6 people. More than enough room for a man to lose himself in emptiness. As the coffee brewed, Nathan found himself studying the women in his peripheral vision. They did not fidget or whisper among themselves. They simply stood waiting with the patience of people who had learned that good things did not come to those who demanded them. Charlotte broke the silence. "Mr. Cross, before we go further, there is something you should know. We are not running from the law, but we are running from someone who believes he is above it." Nathan turned to face her fully. "Who Theodore Garrison?" The name meant nothing to Nathan, but the way Charlotte said it with controlled fury, barely masking fear, told him everything he needed to know. This Garrison was dangerous, and these 5 women had crossed him. "Sit," Nathan said, gesturing to the kitchen table. "Tell me." Charlotte glanced at the others, receiving silent nods of permission, then pulled out a chair. The other 4 remained standing, a protective formation around their leader. Nathan poured coffee into 6 tin cups, the only dishes he owned that were not collecting dust. He set them on the table and took the chair across from Charlotte. She wrapped her hands around the cup, seeking warmth, and began to speak. "2 years ago, my husband Thomas was killed in a mining accident. At least that is what the official report said. But I know the truth. Theodore Garrison had him murdered." Nathan said nothing, just listened. Thomas was a foreman at the Silver Creek mine. He discovered that Garrison had been poisoning the water supply to drive down property values so he could buy the land cheaply. Thomas planned to report it to the territorial authorities. 3 days before he could file the report, there was a cave-in. Thomas and 2 other men died. The mine inspectors ruled it an accident caused by faulty timber supports. "But they were not faulty," Nathan said quietly. Charlotte's eyes met his, and he saw the depth of her pain. "No, They were sabotaged. I found evidence splinters of wood that had been deliberately weakened. But when I took it to the local sheriff, he told me I was a grieving widow seeing conspiracies where there were only tragedies, because Garrison owned the sheriff. Charlotte nodded. And the judge, and half the town council. Thomas was not the first man Garrison had killed, and he would not be the last. She gestured to Ruby, who stepped forward. Her voice when she spoke carried the rough edge of barely controlled rage. My husband Jack owned a horse ranch in Wyoming. Garrison wanted the land. Jack refused to sell. One night our barn caught fire. Jack went in to save the horses. The barn collapsed on him. By the time I dragged him out, he was already gone. The fire marshal said it was an accident. A lantern left burning. But Jack never left lanterns burning, Charlotte added. He was meticulous about fire safety. Had been since his brother died in a house fire when they were children. Sarah spoke next, her voice so soft Nathan had to lean forward to hear. My husband Peter was a doctor. He treated some of Garrison's workers who had been injured in unsafe conditions. Peter started asking questions about why so many men were getting hurt, about why Garrison's companies had 3 times the accident rate of other operations. He wrote letters to the Territorial Medical Board. A week later he was robbed and murdered on his way home from a house call. They never found who did it. Vivian's turn. My husband Henry was a bank accountant. Garrison wanted a large loan for a new venture, but Henry discovered the collateral Garrison was offering was fraudulent. Henry refused to approve the loan. 2 days later the bank was robbed. Henry was shot trying to protect the vault. The robbers were never caught, but they left behind more money than they took. It was a message, not a theft. Grace spoke last, her voice carrying the weight of years. My husband Robert was a blacksmith. He witnessed Garrison ordering the sabotage of a competitor's equipment. Robert agreed to testify in court. Before the trial date, he was arrested on false charges of theft. While in jail, he was poisoned. The authorities said he took his own life. Robert was the most devout man I ever knew. He would never have committed suicide. The kitchen fell silent except for the crackling of the fire Nathan had rebuilt in the hearth. 5 dead husbands. 5 women left with nothing but their grief and the knowledge that the man who destroyed their lives walked free. Nathan felt something cold and familiar settle in his chest. The helplessness of watching someone you love die. The rage at a universe that allowed good people to suffer while evil men prospered. He had felt it 8 years ago, standing beside 2 graves, wondering why God had taken his family and left him behind. "You went to the law," he said. "We went to Marshal William Hayes." Charlotte replied. "He is the only lawman in Denver who is not in Garrison's pocket. Hayes believed us, but he said without concrete evidence there was nothing he could do. Garrison is too powerful, too connected. Hayes advised us to leave Denver to hide somewhere Garrison could not find us." "But you did not hide," Nathan said. "You fought back." Charlotte's hands tightened around her coffee cup. "We planned to. The 5 of us met regularly, gathering evidence, documenting every suspicious death, every bribe, every threat. We thought if we could build a strong enough case, even Garrison's influence could not save him." "What happened?" Ruby answered, her voice hard. "We found out Garrison was planning something new. Not just killing competitors or silencing witnesses. He was bringing in young women from the East, promising them respectable work, then forcing them into situations they could not escape. Indentured servitude, dressed up in legal contracts. One night, Charlotte continued, Garrison held a party at his mansion. We knew he kept documents in his study, evidence of his illegal activities. We planned to break in during the party, steal the documents, and disappear before anyone noticed. But something went wrong, Nathan said. Charlotte's face paled at the memory. We got into the study, found the documents. But then we heard screaming from upstairs. We went to investigate and found Garrison in his bedroom with a girl. She could not have been more than 16. He was hurting her. Ruby's voice shook with barely suppressed violence. I grabbed a wine bottle and hit him over the head. He went down. We thought we had killed him. We took the girl and ran, got her to a church that helps women in trouble. Then we scattered. But Garrison did not die. He woke up, and now he is hunting us. Nathan absorbed this, his mind working through the implications. So you came here, to Jeremiah. Charlotte nodded. Marshall Hayes knew your brother. Said Jeremiah was one of the few truly good men he had ever met. That if anyone could help us disappear, it would be him. We arrived here 6 months ago. Jeremiah took us in no questions asked. He let us stay in this house, helped us create new identities, taught us how to survive in the wilderness if we needed to run again. And then Nathan prompted, though he already suspected the answer. Charlotte's eyes filled with tears she refused to let fall. 3 months ago, Jeremiah went to Denver on business. When he came back, he seemed troubled. He told us he had been followed, that someone had recognized him. 2 weeks later, he went out hunting and never came back. They found his body at the base of Red Ridge Cliff. The sheriff ruled it an accidental fall, but it was not an accident. No, Charlotte whispered. Grace found boot prints at the top of the cliff. 2 sets. Someone was with him. Someone pushed him. Garrison, or one of his men. We do not know for certain. But Jeremiah died protecting us, Mr. Cross. He died because he was the only person willing to stand between us and a monster. Nathan stood abruptly walking to the window. Outside, the November sun was climbing higher, burning off the morning frost. The land stretched out in rolling hills of brown grass and scattered pine. His brother's land. His land now, land that had cost Jeremiah his life. He thought about the letter the lawyer had given him with the deed. The lawyer had been very clear. The property was unencumbered, no debts, no liens. But he had also said something strange. Your brother left specific instructions. He wanted you to have this place, said you would know what to do with it when the time came. At the time, Nathan had thought it meaningless sentiment. Now he understood. Jeremiah had known he might die, had known that Nathan, with his military background and his own losses, would be the right person to protect what Jeremiah could not. His brother had left him more than a house. He had left him a mission. Nathan turned back to the 5 women. How long before Garrison finds you here? Charlotte met his gaze steadily. We do not know. We have been careful, but he has resources. Money, men, connections. It could be weeks. It could be tomorrow. And when he comes, Charlotte's voice hardened. We will not go back. We will die first. The words hung in the air, a promise and a threat. Nathan recognized the tone. He had used it himself once long ago when a Confederate officer had demanded his unit surrender. Some things were worth dying for. Some fights had to be fought regardless of the odds. He thought of Emma, of the way she had looked at him on their wedding day. The trust in her eyes. The absolute certainty that he would protect her and any children they might have. He had failed that trust. Had been hunting elk in the mountains while plague swept through their town, killing his wife and daughter before he could get home to save them. For 8 years he had lived with that failure. Had let it hollow him out until he was nothing but a shell going through the motions of existence. He had told himself he did not deserve happiness, did not deserve connection, did not deserve to live when Emma and Lily were dead. But looking at these 5 women, at Charlotte with her fierce determination and hidden pain, he wondered if his brother had understood something Nathan did not. That redemption was not found in isolation. That the only way to honor the dead was to protect the living. He made his decision. You will stay, Nathan said. All of you, for as long as you need. Charlotte's eyes widened. But Garrison, we'll have to go through me first. Ruby stepped forward. Mr. Cross, you do not understand what you are offering. Garrison has killed better men than you, richer men, more powerful men. Nathan met her fierce blue gaze without flinching. I am not rich or powerful, but I am a man who has nothing left to lose, and that makes me more dangerous than Garrison can imagine. Sarah spoke up, her voice trembling. We cannot ask you to risk your life for strangers. You are not asking, Nathan said quietly. I am choosing. And you are not strangers. You are people who loved and lost just like me. You are people who refused to give up even when the world told you to accept injustice. That is not weakness. That is strength. Vivian's calculating eyes studied him. What do you want in return? Nathan considered the question. What did he want? For 8 years he had wanted nothing, had felt nothing, had been a dead man walking through a living world. He said slowly to matter again. I want my life to mean something beyond waking up and going to sleep. I want to protect people I could not protect before. And I want to make the man who killed my brother pay for what he has done." Charlotte stood, moving closer to Nathan. She was tall for a woman, her eyes nearly level with his. In those green depths he saw the reflection of his own pain. Two wounded souls recognizing each other across a kitchen table. "We accept your offer," she said, "but there are things you need to know. Things about us, about what we have done. We are not innocent victims, Mr. Cross. We have blood on our hands." Nathan thought of the war, of the men he had killed in service to a cause he had not fully believed in. Thought of the faces that haunted his dreams, Confederate soldiers who were just boys really fighting for their homes. Thought of the weight of those deaths, the way they accumulated like stones in his chest. "We all have blood on our hands," he said. "The question is whether we spilled it for the right reasons." Charlotte nodded slowly, something like respect flickering in her eyes. "Then we have much to discuss. But first, if the offer still stands, we would like to see where we will be staying." Nathan led them upstairs, acutely aware of 5 sets of footsteps following him. The second floor had 8 bedrooms arranged along a central hallway, 4 on each side. He had been sleeping in one of the smaller rooms downstairs, unable to bring himself to occupy the master bedroom Jeremiah had used. "You can choose whichever rooms you want," Nathan said. "They are all empty." The women moved through the hallway, opening doors, peering into spaces that had been closed for years. Nathan watched Charlotte pause at the doorway of the largest bedroom, the one at the end of the hall, with windows facing east and south. Morning light flooded the space, making it seem almost warm despite the cold November air. This was Jeremiah's room, Charlotte said. It was not a question. "Yes." She turned to Nathan. "You should take it." "No," Nathan said firmly. "I will stay downstairs. These rooms are for you." Charlotte studied him for a long moment, then nodded. "As you wish." The women chose their rooms with quiet efficiency. Charlotte took the large bedroom at the end of the hall. Ruby selected the room next to Charlotte's, positioned strategically to guard the approach to her friend's door. Sarah chose a smaller room with a window overlooking the garden Jeremiah had planted, now overgrown and wild. Vivian took the room nearest the stairs, the first line of defense if anyone came up from below. Grace claimed the room across from Charlotte's, a maternal instinct placing her where she could watch over the others. When they had each deposited their meager belongings, they returned downstairs to find Nathan building up the fire in the main hearth. The house was cold, colder than it should be. He had let so many things slide in his grief. "We should discuss logistics," Vivian said, her practical mind already working through problems. "Food supplies, security. If Garrison is truly hunting us, we need to prepare." Nathan straightened from the fireplace. "Agreed. The cellar is well stocked. Jeremiah was thorough about such things. There is enough food for 6 people to last through winter if we are careful. As for security—" He paused, remembering something. A conversation with Jeremiah years ago, before Emma died, when Nathan had visited the ranch during its construction. His brother showing him features of the house with mysterious pride. Things Nathan had not understood then. "Follow me," Nathan said abruptly. He led them to the study, a room he had avoided for 3 years. The door stuck slightly as he pushed it open, swollen from disuse. Inside, everything was as Jeremiah had left it. Desk neat and organized, books lined up on shelves, a large cabinet against one wall locked. Nathan searched through the desk drawers until he found a ring of keys. He selected one and opened the cabinet. Inside were documents, maps, and something unexpected, a leather-bound journal. He pulled out the journal, recognizing his brother's precise handwriting on the cover. "Nathan Cross. If you are reading this, I am gone, but my work is not finished. Please finish it for me." Charlotte moved closer, reading over his shoulder. He knew he might die. Nathan flipped open the journal, scanning the entries. They started 18 months ago, around the time the 5 women must have arrived. Jeremiah had documented everything: his suspicions about being followed, his concerns about Garrison, his plans to protect the women, and something else, something that made Nathan's blood run cold. He knew about the tunnel, Nathan said, reading faster. My God, he built a tunnel. Ruby stepped forward. What tunnel? Nathan looked up from the journal, his mind racing. Jeremiah suspected that if Garrison found this place, there would be violence, so he prepared an escape route. There is a tunnel running from the cellar to the forest half a mile away. He spent 2 years digging it, shoring it up, making it safe. Show us, Charlotte said immediately. Nathan led them to the cellar, the journal in his hand. The space was large, lined with shelves of preserved food, barrels of flour, and salt crates of supplies. He moved to the far wall, running his hands along the stones. It should be here somewhere. A hidden door. Grace knelt down, her fingers tracing the mortar lines. Here. This section is newer. See how the mortar is slightly different in color. Together. Nathan and Grace found the release mechanism, a stone that pushed inward rather than sitting flush with the wall. When Nathan pressed it, they heard a click. A section of the wall, perhaps 4 feet wide and 6 feet tall, swung inward on well-oiled hinges. Beyond was darkness and the smell of earth. Nathan grabbed a lantern from the shelf, lit it, and held it into the opening. The light revealed a tunnel roughly 7 feet high and 5 feet wide, shored up with timber supports. The floor was packed earth-dry and solid. My brother was a remarkable man, Nathan said quietly. He saved our lives, Grace whispered. Even after he died, he is still protecting us. They explored the tunnel's entrance but did not venture far. It would be there if they needed it. For now, knowing it existed was enough. Back in the main house, they gathered around the kitchen table again. The afternoon sun slanted through the windows, painting everything in shades of gold. For a moment, the house felt almost alive, almost like a home. We need rules, Nathan said. If we are going to survive this, we need to be clear about expectations and boundaries. Charlotte nodded. Agreed. What do you propose? First, no one goes into town without at least one other person. Second, we establish a watch rotation, someone awake and alert at all times. Third, we create signals, ways to warn each other if there is danger. Vivian pulled out a notebook and pencil from her bag, beginning to write. What else? We train, Ruby said. If Garrison comes, we need to be ready to fight. Nathan looked at the redhead with new respect. You know how to shoot. My father taught me, but I am out of practice. Then we will practice together, all of you, rifles, pistols, anything we have. By the time Garrison finds us, if he finds us, you will be ready. The conversation continued for hours, planning and preparing. They discussed fields of fire, defensible positions, supply rationing, and emergency protocols. Nathan found himself falling into old patterns from his military days, thinking tactically, anticipating scenarios. But as the light faded and Grace stood to begin preparing an evening meal, Nathan realized something had shifted. For the first time in 3 years, he was not simply existing. He was living, planning for a future beyond the next day, protecting people who depended on him. It felt like purpose. It felt like redemption. That night, after a simple meal of salt pork and beans that Grace somehow made delicious, Nathan sat on the front porch. The stars were brilliant in the November sky, cold and distant. He heard the door open behind him and was not surprised when Charlotte stepped out, wrapping a shawl around her shoulders against the chill. Mind if I join you? She asked. Nathan gestured to the chair beside him. Charlotte sat, and for a long moment they simply existed in companionable silence. Two people who understood that sometimes words were inadequate. Finally, Charlotte spoke. Why are you really doing this, Nathan? And please do not tell me it is just about honoring your brother. Nathan considered the question, wanting to answer honestly. Because I failed once. I was not there when my family needed me most. I was hunting in the mountains while plague killed my wife and daughter. For 8 years I have lived with that failure, with the knowledge that if I had been home, maybe I could have saved them. You could not have, Charlotte said gently. Disease does not care about our will to protect. Perhaps not. But I will never know, and that not knowing has been eating me alive. So when you and the others appeared today, when I realized my brother died trying to protect you, it felt like a second chance, A chance to be the man I should have been 8 years ago. Charlotte turned to look at him, her face half in shadow. And if we all die fighting Garrison, then at least I will die for something that matters. That is more than I have had in a very long time. Charlotte reached out her hand, finding his on the arm of the chair. Her fingers were cold, but her grip was strong. Thank you for giving us hope. We have been running so long I had almost forgotten what it felt like to stand and fight. Nathan looked down at their joined hands. The touch did not feel like betrayal. Emma would have understood. Emma, who had always believed in helping people and standing against injustice, would have opened the door to these 5 women without hesitation. What happens tomorrow? Charlotte asked. Tomorrow we start training, we prepare, and we wait. Waiting is the hardest part. Nathan nodded. I know. They sat together until the cold drove them inside. Nathan showed Charlotte how to bank the fire for the night, how to secure the doors and windows. Small domestic tasks that felt strange after so long alone. As Charlotte climbed the stairs to her room, she paused on the landing. Nathan. Yes. I am glad Jeremiah left this place to you. I think he knew exactly what he was doing. Nathan did not respond, but he thought she was probably right. Jeremiah had always been the smarter brother, the one who understood people and their hidden depths. If his final act had been to bring Nathan and these 5 women together, then perhaps his death had not been meaningless. Perhaps none of this was meaningless. Nathan made his rounds, checking windows and doors, ensuring the house was secure. When he finally lay down in his small bedroom off the kitchen, he expected to lie awake as he usually did, staring at the ceiling until exhaustion pulled him under. But tonight, he fell asleep quickly, dreamlessly. And when he woke at dawn to the smell of coffee and frying bacon, to the sound of women's voices in his kitchen, he felt something he had not felt in 8 years. He felt needed. The morning routine established itself with surprising ease. Grace proved to be an excellent cook, transforming their basic supplies into filling meals. Ruby took charge of the horses, her natural skill with animals evident in how she handled Nathan's aging mare and the horses the women had ridden in on. Sarah organized the house, her gentle efficiency bringing order to spaces that had been neglected. Vivian created an inventory system, tracking supplies and planning for future needs. Charlotte, meanwhile, seemed to be everywhere at once, coordinating efforts, making decisions, leading without seeming to lead. Nathan spent the morning gathering weapons. The house had more than he remembered. His brother had apparently been preparing for trouble. 3 rifles, 4 pistols, ammunition enough for a small war. He cleaned each weapon methodically, teaching the women as he worked. Ruby proved to be as good as she claimed, her aim steady and her instincts sharp. Charlotte learned quickly, her hands sure on the rifle despite her lack of experience. Sarah struggled with the recoil, but was determined to master it. Vivian approached firearms with the same analytical precision she applied to everything else, studying angles and sight pictures. Grace, to everyone's surprise, turned out to be nearly as good as Ruby, her hands steady despite their age. As Nathan watched them practice, he felt something like pride. These were not helpless victims. They were warriors being forged by necessity. On the 3rd day, Marshal William Hayes arrived. Nathan was in the barn when he heard the sound of approaching hoofbeats. He stepped outside, hand instinctively moving to the pistol at his hip, and watched a lone rider emerge from the tree line. The man was in his mid-50s, weather-worn and lean, with iron-gray hair and sharp blue eyes. He wore a marshal's badge pinned to his coat. As he drew closer, Nathan saw Charlotte emerge from the house, her face tight with tension. The rider dismounted, his movements careful, non-threatening. "Marshal William Hayes," he said, addressing Nathan. "You must be Nathan Cross." "I am. What brings a federal marshal to my property?" Hayes's eyes flicked to Charlotte, who had come to stand beside Nathan. "I am looking for 5 women. I believe they may be here." Before Nathan could respond, Charlotte spoke. "We are here. Marshal. All of us." Hayes's shoulders sagged with visible relief. "Thank God. I have been searching for weeks." He turned to Nathan. "Mr. Cross, I need to speak with these women. It is urgent." They gathered in the house, the 5 women arrayed around Hayes like a defensive perimeter. The marshal accepted coffee from Grace but did not drink it too, focused on delivering his message. "Garrison knows where you are," Hayes said without preamble. "Or rather, he knows you are somewhere in this region. He has hired men to search every ranch, every homestead, every isolated property within 100 miles of Denver." "How long do we have?" Vivian asked, her voice calm despite the fear in her eyes. "Days. Maybe a week if we are lucky. I came as soon as I heard he was mobilizing his forces." "Forces," Ruby repeated. "How many men?" Hayes's expression was grim. "At least 15. Professional gunmen. The kind who kill for money and do not ask questions." The room fell silent. 15 against 6. The mathematics were not favorable. "We have the tunnel," Sarah said quietly. "We could leave now, disappear before they arrive, and go where Charlotte asked. We would be right back where we started. Running, hiding, always looking over our shoulders." She turned to Hayes. "Can you stop him?" "Legally, I have been building a case for 2 years," Hayes said. "But Garrison is protected by people more powerful than a territorial marshal. I need more time, more evidence, something so damning that even his friends cannot shield him." Nathan had been listening quietly, his mind working through scenarios. Now he spoke. "What kind of evidence?" Hayes pulled a folder from his saddlebag. "This is what I have so far. Testimony from witnesses, financial records showing bribes and kickbacks, documentation of suspicious deaths. But it is all circumstantial. What I need is someone on the inside. Someone who can testify to Garrison's direct involvement in ordering these crimes." His wife, Charlotte, said suddenly. "Margaret Garrison." Hayes looked at her sharply. "You know about Margaret?" Charlotte nodded. "Jeremiah told us. He said Garrison claimed his wife died of consumption 5 years ago. But Jeremiah never believed it. He thought Garrison had her committed to an asylum to silence her." Hayes leaned forward. "What else did Jeremiah know?" Charlotte glanced at Nathan, who nodded for her to continue. "He said Margaret discovered evidence of her husband's crimes, that she was preparing to leave him to take that evidence to the authorities. But before she could, Garrison had her declared insane and institutionalized. Jeremiah spent months trying to find which asylum, but he never succeeded." "I did?" Hayes said quietly. 3 weeks ago, I located Margaret Garrison at the Riverside Sanatorium outside Denver. She is alive, though Garrison has spent 5 years paying the administrators to keep her sedated and compliant." "Can you get her out?" Nathan asked. Hayes shook his head. "Not without legal authority. And getting that authority would tip off Garrison that we know about her. He would move her or worse before we could act." "So we are back to waiting," Ruby said bitterly. "No," Nathan said. "We prepare. We turn this ranch into a fortress, and when Garrison comes we make sure he does not leave." Hayes studied Nathan with new interest. "You are proposing to fight. I am proposing to defend my property and the people under my protection. If Garrison wants them, he will have to come through me. Against 15 professional gunmen, Mr. Cross, that is not defense. That is suicide." "Perhaps," Nathan said. "But it is better than running. These women have run far enough." Charlotte placed a hand on Nathan's arm. "We cannot ask you to die for us." Nathan looked at her, seeing the strength and fear warring in her green eyes. "You are not asking. I am choosing, just as Jeremiah chose." The room fell silent again, but this time it was a different kind of silence. Not the silence of despair, but the silence of people gathering their courage for what was to come. Hayes stood. "I should go. If Garrison's men are searching the area, they might see my horse. But I will be back. And if you need help—" He left the sentence unfinished. They all knew that if it came to a fight, Hayes could not officially help without evidence of a crime. But the look in his eyes said he would come anyway, badge or no badge. After Hayes left, Nathan gathered the women in the study. He spread out a hand-drawn map of the property on Jeremiah's desk. The ranch sat in a natural, defensible position backed against a ridge of hills with open ground on 3 sides and forest on the 4th. "If they come, this is how they will approach," Nathan said, tracing the likely attack routes. "They will want to surround the house, cut off escape routes. Our advantage is that we know this ground and they do not." Ruby leaned over the map. "What about the tunnel?" It is our last resort. If we have to evacuate, that is our route. But I would prefer to make them pay for every inch they take." Over the next 3 days, they transformed the ranch. They reinforced the doors and windows with heavy shutters. They created firing positions with clear fields of view. They dug shallow trenches at key points, obstacles that would slow attackers. They stockpiled water and ammunition in strategic locations. And they trained. Nathan drilled them relentlessly, teaching them not just to shoot, but to fight tactically. How to provide covering fire. How to fall back in good order. How to communicate under stress. Charlotte proved to be a natural leader, her commands calm and clear, even in simulated emergencies. Ruby had the instincts of a warrior, aggressive and fearless. Sarah overcame her fear through sheer determination, her shots becoming more accurate with each practice session. Vivian approached combat like a chess match, always thinking 3 moves ahead. Grace provided steady support, her maternal presence keeping the others focused and calm. But it was the evenings that Nathan treasured most. After the hard work of preparation, they would gather around the fire and talk. Not about garrison or violence or fear, but about their lives. About who they had been before tragedy struck. Ruby spoke of growing up on a ranch in Wyoming, of learning to ride before she could walk. Of marrying Jack Walsh, a man as steady as the mountains, and building a life together, breaking horses and raising cattle. Sarah told them about her husband Peter, a doctor who had treated rich and poor alike, who had believed that healing was a calling, not a business. She spoke of the joy they had found in small things, in Sunday picnics and evening walks, in the simple comfort of being known and loved. Vivian shared memories of Henry, her accountant husband, who had seen numbers as poetry, who had shown her that precision and passion were not opposites. She spoke of their plans to open their own bank, one that would serve working people fairly. Grace remembered Robert, her blacksmith husband, whose hands could shape iron but were gentle with children. She spoke of the life they had built together, simple and honest, full of hard work and deep contentment. And Charlotte talked about Thomas, her minor husband, who had believed in justice even when it cost him everything. She spoke of his laugh, his stubbornness, his absolute certainty that good men had to stand against evil even if they stood alone. Nathan listened to these stories, hearing the love that persisted beyond death. And one night, prompted by Charlotte's gentle questioning, he spoke of Emma and Lily, of his wife's kindness and fierce protective love, of his daughter's laugh, her curiosity, her absolute trust that her father would always keep her safe. "I was not there," Nathan said, his voice rough with old pain. "I was hunting when the plague came. By the time I got home, they had been dead for 2 days. Grace Porter, the town's healer, not this Grace, but another woman with the same name, she told me Emma had called for me at the end, had asked where I was. Charlotte's hand found his in the firelight. You could not have known. That is what makes it worse. If I had known, I would have been there. I would have held her hand, told her I loved her. But I was stalking elk in the high country, completely unaware that my world was ending." Ruby spoke up, surprising everyone. "My husband died saving horses. Horses we could have replaced. But he could not be replaced. For months I hated him for choosing animals over me, over our future. Then I realized he did not choose the horses. He chose to be the man he was, the man who could not walk away from suffering. That is who I loved, and I cannot hate him for being exactly who he was." Nathan looked at Ruby, seeing the wisdom in her fierce blue eyes. "Perhaps you are right. Perhaps I have been hating myself for being who I am. A hunter, a man who provided for his family by being away from them." "You were a good husband and father," Grace said quietly. "The fact that you grieve proves that. Bad men do not mourn." The conversation drifted to other topics, lighter memories. But Nathan felt something loosen in his chest, a knot of guilt he had carried for 8 years, if not released, at least acknowledged. These women understood loss in a way few others could. They did not offer him easy absolution, but they offered him understanding, and that he realized was worth more than forgiveness. On the 6th day after Hayes's visit, everything changed. Nathan was checking the perimeter defenses when he heard hoofbeats, fast, urgent. He grabbed his rifle and ran toward the sound, heart pounding. But it was not Garrison's men. It was Marshal Hayes riding hard, his horse lathered with sweat. Hayes dismounted before the horse had fully stopped. "They are coming. Tomorrow at dawn. Garrison has assembled 20 men, not 15. I could not stop them legally, but I delayed them as long as I could." 20. Charlotte repeated, her face pale. "We cannot fight 20 men." "You do not have to," Hayes said. "I brought help. 10 federal marshals are on their way. They should arrive by noon tomorrow. If you can hold until then." 12 hours, Nathan said. "We need to survive 12 hours. Hayes nodded. "I will stay and fight with you. I am done pretending the law can handle this quietly. Garrison is going down one way or another." Charlotte looked at Nathan, and in her eyes he saw the question she did not speak. Could they survive 12 hours against 20 professional killers? Nathan thought of Emma, of the promise he had made beside her grave to protect what he could, to matter in ways that honored her memory. He thought of Jeremiah, who had given his life protecting these women. He thought of the 5 widows who had suffered enough, who deserved a chance at peace. "We will hold," Nathan said. "We will do whatever it takes, but we will hold." That night, no one slept. They made final preparations, checked weapons, reviewed plans. Nathan positioned people at key defensive points. Ruby and Charlotte would hold the upper floor with their rifles. Sarah and Grace would provide support fire from the reinforced windows downstairs. Vivian would manage ammunition and supplies moving between positions. Nathan and Hayes would be mobile, responding to wherever the attack was strongest. As the night deepened toward morning, Nathan found Charlotte standing at the upstairs window, looking out at the dark landscape. "Nervous?" he asked. "Terrified," Charlotte admitted, "but also ready. We have been victims long enough. Tomorrow we become something else. What is that, survivors, or ghosts who take Garrison with us? Either way, we will not go quietly." Nathan stood beside her close enough that their shoulders touched. "Charlotte, if tomorrow goes badly, there is something I need you to know." She turned to look at him, her face pale in the moonlight. "What?" "You remind me why life is worth living. For 8 years I have been a ghost. You and the others, you brought me back. Whatever happens tomorrow, thank you for that." Charlotte's hand found his, their fingers intertwining. "Nathan, She did not finish the sentence. Instead, she leaned forward and kissed him. It was brief, gentle, filled with all the things they had not said and might never have the chance to say. When she pulled back, Nathan saw tears on her cheeks. "Survive tomorrow," she whispered. "We have unfinished business." Nathan smiled, the first genuine smile he had managed in years. "Yes, ma'am. I intend to." They stood together at the window, watching the eastern sky slowly lighten from black to gray. Somewhere out there, 20 men were riding toward them, intent on murder. But here in this moment, Nathan felt something unexpected. He felt alive, fully, completely alive, ready to fight for something that mattered, ready to protect people he had come to care for, ready to be the man Emma would have been proud of. The sun rose, painting the hills in shades of gold and red. In the distance, Nathan saw movement. Riders. Many riders. It was time. He squeezed Charlotte's hand once, then moved to his position. Around the house, 6 people prepared to fight for their lives. 6 against 20. Impossible odds by any measure. But Nathan had learned something in 8 years of loneliness. Sometimes the impossible was worth attempting. Sometimes the fight itself mattered more than the outcome. And sometimes when you had lost everything, you found that you had nothing left to fear. The riders drew closer, a dark line against the morning sky. Nathan checked his rifle one last time, took a deep breath, and waited for Garrison to make his move. The 20 riders stopped at the edge of rifle range, a dark line of men and horses silhouetted against the rising sun. Nathan watched them through the window of the fortified house, his rifle resting on the sill, his breathing steady despite the hammering of his heart. They were not rushing in. They were taking their time, studying the house, the terrain, looking for weaknesses. Professional soldiers would do the same. These were not angry townsmen or drunk cowboys. These were killers who understood their craft. In the center of the line sat a man on a white horse. Even at this distance, Nathan could see the expensive cut of his clothing, the deliberate calm of his posture. Theodore Garrison, the man who had murdered 5 husbands and ordered Jeremiah killed. The man who thought women were property to be owned and controlled. Garrison raised his hand, and the line of riders spread out, beginning to encircle the house. Nathan had anticipated this. He had positioned his defenders to cover all approaches, but 20 men could create overlapping fields of fire that would make any defense difficult. Charlotte appeared at Nathan's shoulder, her rifle in hand. Her face was pale, but composed. "Are you afraid?" Nathan considered the question honestly. "Yes, but fear can sharpen the mind if you let it." "Thomas used to say something similar," Charlotte said quietly. "He said fear was just your body preparing you to survive. The trick was not to let it control you. Your husband was a wise man. He was." Charlotte's grip tightened on her rifle. "I wish he could see this. See us fighting back instead of running." "He sees it," Nathan said. "They all do. And they are proud." A voice called out from the riders, loud and cultured, carrying easily across the cold morning air. Charlotte Reeves, Ruby Walsh, Sarah Quinn, Vivian Hayes, Grace Porter. "I know you are in there. This has gone on long enough." Garrison's voice was calm, reasonable, the tone of a man discussing business rather than murder. Nathan felt Charlotte tense beside him. "I am offering you one chance to end this peacefully," Garrison continued. "Come out now. Return to Denver with me. I promise no harm will come to you. We can settle this like civilized people." Charlotte moved to the window, her voice ringing out clear and strong. "We are done being civilized with a man who has none. You killed our husbands. You killed Jeremiah Cross. You have stolen, murdered, and corrupted everything you touched. There will be no peace between us." Garrison sighed, the sound carrying theatrical disappointment. "How unfortunate. I had hoped you would see reason." "Very well. Mr. Cross, I presume you are in there as well." Nathan stepped into view at the window. "I am. This is not your fight. These women have filled your head with lies about me. If you send them out, you have my word that you will be left unharmed." "Your word means nothing," Nathan replied. "You murdered my brother. That makes this very much my fight." Garrison's posture shifted slightly, the calm facade cracking just enough to show the anger beneath. "Your brother was a fool who interfered in matters that did not concern him. He paid the price for his meddling. The question is whether you are equally foolish." "My brother was worth 10 of you," Nathan said, "and when this is over, you will answer for his death." "Bold words from a dead man," Garrison said. "You are outnumbered. You have no supplies, no reinforcements, no hope. Surrender now, and I will make your death quick." Nathan raised his rifle, sighting down the barrel at Garrison. The range was long, but not impossible. His finger rested on the trigger, and for a moment he considered taking the shot, ending Garrison here and now, regardless of what happened after. But Charlotte's hand touched his arm. "Not yet. Make him come to us." Nathan lowered the rifle slightly. She was right. They had the advantage of fortifications. Forcing Garrison to attack across open ground would cost him men and time. Time they needed to survive until the federal marshals arrived. Garrison seemed to sense Nathan's decision. He turned his horse, calling out to his men, "Burn them out." Nathan pulled back from the window as gunfire erupted. Bullets shattered glass and splintered wood. He dropped to the floor, pulling Charlotte down with him. Around the house he heard return fire from Ruby, Sarah, Grace, and Vivian. Marshal Hayes was somewhere below his rifle, adding to the defensive barrage. The initial volley was withering, designed to keep the defenders pinned while Garrison's men advanced. Nathan crawled to a different window, risking a glance outside. Half of Garrison's force was dismounting, moving forward in a loose skirmish line. The other half remained mounted, circling the house, looking for weak points. Nathan aimed carefully, leading his target, accounting for distance and wind. He squeezed the trigger. The rifle bucked against his shoulder. 100 yards away, one of Garrison's men stumbled and fell, clutching his leg. First blood to the defenders. Ruby's rifle cracked from the next room. Another of Garrison's men went down, this one not moving. The redhead was as good as she claimed, her aim deadly, even under stress. But Garrison's men were professionals. They did not panic or retreat. They found cover behind rocks and trees, maintaining steady fire on the house, while others continued to advance. Nathan saw one group moving toward the barn, trying to flank them. "Hayes," Nathan shouted. "Barn! East side!" He heard the marshal's rifle answer from below, the distinctive boom of a heavy-caliber weapon. The men advancing on the barn scattered, seeking new cover. The fight settled into a pattern. Garrison's men would advance, the defenders would drive them back, and slowly, inexorably, the attackers would gain ground. Nathan counted ammunition in his head, calculating how long they could maintain this rate of fire. 6 hours, maybe 8, if they were careful. The marshals were supposed to arrive in 12. A crash from below made Nathan's heart stop. One of the shutters had been breached. He heard Hayes curse, then the roar of a shotgun. Screams followed, then silence. "Hayes." Nathan called down. "Talk to me." Still alive, the marshal's voice came back tight with pain. "Took one in the shoulder, but I got both of them." Charlotte was already moving toward the stairs. "I will help him." Nathan caught her arm. "No. If you leave your position, we lose coverage on the north approach." He looked at the ceiling, calculating. "Vivian, you are closest to Hayes. Can you get to him?" "Already moving?" Vivian's voice came from somewhere nearby. Nathan heard her footsteps on the stairs, quick and light. He turned back to his window, scanning for targets. The sun was higher now, burning off the morning chill. Bodies lay scattered around the house. Nathan counted 5 down, maybe 6. Garrison still had overwhelming numbers, but he was paying a price for every foot of ground. A new sound cut through the gunfire, the crackling of flames. Nathan's blood went cold. They had torched the barn. Thick black smoke rose into the clear morning sky, and even from the house Nathan could feel the heat. Charlotte appeared at his side, her face streaked with powder smoke. "If they burn us out, we will have to use the tunnel." "Not yet," Nathan said. "The barn is separate from the house. As long as they do not reach the main structure, we can hold, and if they do reach it, then we make them regret it." The barn collapsed in a shower of sparks and burning timber. The horses they had sheltered there, including Nathan's mare and the women's mounts, had been led to safety in the pre-dawn darkness, hidden in a ravine a quarter-mile away. Still watching the structure burn felt like a defeat. Garrison's voice called out again, smug with satisfaction. "You see how easy it is to destroy what you love. Surrender now, while you still have a house to surrender from." Nathan did not bother responding. He was conserving ammunition, taking only shots he was confident would hit. Beside him, Charlotte did the same, her movements economical and precise. She had learned quickly, transforming from a woman who had never held a rifle to a competent fighter in less than a week. The morning wore on. The sun climbed higher, and the temperature inside the fortified house rose despite the November chill outside. Nathan's shoulder ached from the rifle's recoil. His ears rang from the constant gunfire. Sweat stung his eyes, but they were holding. Vivian appeared at the top of the stairs, her hands bloody. "Hayes is stable. The bullet went through clean, but he has lost blood. He needs rest. Can he still shoot if he has to?" "But it would be better if he did not have to." Nathan nodded. "Keep him in reserve. We may need him later." Below, something heavy slammed into the front door, once, twice, 3 times. The reinforced timber held, but Nathan heard the wood beginning to splinter. Charlotte sighted down her rifle, aiming at the door. "When they break through, we make them pay for it." The door shuddered under repeated impacts. Nathan moved to a position where he could cover Charlotte, his rifle aimed at the doorway. In his peripheral vision, he saw Ruby doing the same from the opposite window, creating a crossfire that would turn the entrance into a killing zone. The door exploded inward in a shower of splinters. 3 men rushed through, weapons raised. Charlotte fired. The first man's head snapped back and he crumpled. Ruby fired. The second man spun sideways, his chest blooming red. Nathan fired. The third man managed 2 steps before Nathan's bullet took him in the throat. 3 more of Garrison's men dead. The odds were improving, but they were still outnumbered 2 to 1. "Retreat," Nathan ordered. "Upstairs. We cannot hold the ground floor." They fell back in good order, exactly as they had practiced. Charlotte and Ruby provided covering fire, while Nathan, Vivian, Grace, and Sarah withdrew up the stairs. Then Ruby ran with Charlotte, firing to protect her. Finally, Charlotte herself sprinted for the stairs with Nathan and Ruby both shooting to keep Garrison's men pinned. The upper floor was more defensible. Narrower corridors, fewer entrances, better fields of fire. Nathan positioned his people at the windows and the top of the stairs, creating interlocking zones of control. Below, he heard Garrison's men moving through the house, cautious now, having learned the price of carelessness. They would be searching for the best way to assault the upper floor, looking for weaknesses in the defense. Charlotte crouched beside Nathan at the head of the stairs, reloading her rifle with practiced efficiency. "How many do you think are left?" Nathan did a quick mental calculation. "We have killed 9 for certain. That leaves 11. Still too many, but better odds than before." "The marshals will be here soon." Nathan glanced at the sun's position. It was nearly noon. The marshals should be arriving any time. But every minute felt like an hour, and he could not count on help that had not yet appeared. A sound from below made him tense. Footsteps deliberate and unhurried. Then a voice cultured and calm despite the violence. "Impressive, Mr. Cross. You and your companions have fought well. You have cost me 9 men, 9 expensive men who will need to be replaced. But you must know this cannot continue." Garrison had entered the house. Nathan felt a cold rage settle in his chest. The man responsible for so much death and suffering was standing below him, close enough to kill. "You are right," Nathan called back. "It cannot continue. When the federal marshals arrive, you will be arrested for murder. Multiple murders." Garrison laughed, the sound genuinely amused. "Federal marshals. Ah, yes. William Hayes mentioned something about reinforcements. That is why I made certain to cut the telegraph lines and post men on every road into this valley. Your marshals are not coming, Mr. Cross. Or rather, they are coming, but they will arrive far too late to help you." Nathan felt the words like a physical blow. If Garrison had blocked the roads, the marshals might be delayed by hours. By then, the house would be overrun. Charlotte must have seen something in his face. She gripped his arm, her voice fierce and low. "We do not need them. We have held this long. We can hold longer." Nathan wished he could believe her, but the mathematics were brutal. They were running low on ammunition. Hayes was wounded. Grace, though competent with a rifle, was tiring. They could not sustain this fight indefinitely. A new voice called from below, and Nathan's heart nearly stopped. It was Sarah, her voice high with terror. "Please do not hurt me. I will tell you anything." Charlotte's face went white. "Sarah. They have Sarah." Nathan cursed himself for a fool. In the chaos of the retreat, he had lost track of the youngest member of their group. Somehow Garrison's men had captured her. "Bring her up," Garrison said calmly. "Let them see what cooperation looks like." Sarah appeared at the base of the stairs, held by a man nearly twice her size. Her face was bruised, her dress torn. But her eyes, when they met Nathan's, were not afraid. They were apologetic. "I am sorry," she whispered. "I should have stayed with Grace." The man holding her put a gun to her head. Garrison stepped into view beside them, his expensive suit somehow still immaculate despite the battle. "Now then, let us discuss terms. You surrender, and I let this young woman live. You continue fighting, and I kill her right now. Your choice." Nathan's mind raced. If they surrendered, Garrison would kill them all anyway. But if they refused, Sarah would die. There was no good option, only terrible choices. Charlotte stood, her rifle aimed not at the man holding Sarah, but at Garrison himself. "You want terms? Here are mine. Let Sarah go, and we will not kill you where you stand." Garrison smiled. "You are hardly in a position to make threats, Miss Reeves. I have a gun to your friend's head. You have nothing." "We have this," Charlotte said, and pulled a folded paper from her pocket. Nathan recognized it. One of the documents from Hayes's case file, evidence of Garrison's crimes. "We have copies of every murder you ordered, every bribe you paid, every life you destroyed. William Hayes has the originals. Even if you kill us, the evidence will find its way to the territorial governor. You will hang for what you have done." Garrison's smile faded. "You are bluffing." Charlotte's voice remained steady. "Try me. Kill Sarah and I burn these documents along with your last chance to negotiate. Let her go, and perhaps we can discuss your surrender." The standoff stretched seconds, feeling like hours. Nathan kept his rifle trained on Garrison, his finger on the trigger. If the man made one wrong move, Nathan would end him. Sarah's life be damned. Then a new sound cut through the tension. Hoofbeats, many hoofbeats, coming fast. Garrison's head turned toward the sound, his expression uncertain for the first time. Nathan moved to the window, risking a glance outside. What he saw made his heart soar. Riders, at least 20 of them, wearing the distinctive badges of federal marshals. They had made it through Garrison's blockade. At the head of the column rode Marshal Hayes, somehow back in the saddle despite his wound. And beside him, a woman Nathan had never seen before. Middle-aged blonde hair streaked with gray, her face set with grim determination. The cavalry had arrived, and they had brought Garrison's worst nightmare. The marshals surrounded the house in a loose perimeter, rifles raised but not yet firing. Hayes dismounted carefully, favoring his wounded shoulder. The woman beside him remained mounted, her gaze fixed on the house with an intensity that suggested personal stakes. Theodore Garrison Hayes called out, his voice carrying the weight of federal authority. "You are surrounded. Order your men to stand down and surrender yourself for arrest." Garrison's face had gone pale. He stepped toward the door, still holding the gun on Sarah, using her as a shield. "On what charges?" Murder Hayes replied. "Bribery, corruption, kidnapping. And thanks to the woman beside me, I now have an eyewitness to one of your most heinous crimes." The blonde woman urged her horse forward, and when she spoke, her voice was cold as mountain ice. "Hello, Theodore. Did you miss me?" Garrison's gun hand trembled. "Margaret, that is impossible. You are dead." "Clearly not," Margaret Garrison replied, "though you certainly tried your best. 5 years in that asylum, drugged and helpless, while you told the world I had died of consumption. But I am very much alive, Theodore, and I am going to watch you hang for what you did to me and to all these other people." Nathan watched Garrison's face cycle through emotions: shock, fear, rage, calculation. The man was trapped, his careful plans unraveling. But trapped men were dangerous men. Garrison pressed the gun harder against Sarah's head. "If I am going to hang anyway, then I have nothing to lose." He raised his voice, addressing the marshals. "Order your men back, or I kill this woman." Hayes did not move. "You kill her, and my men kill you. Is one more murder worth dying for?" Garrison's laugh was brittle-edged with madness. "One more, 100 more. What does it matter? I am already damned. At least I can take some of you with me." Nathan saw it in Garrison's eyes. The decision to go down fighting to inflict as much damage as possible in his final moments. The man was going to kill Sarah regardless of what happened next. Charlotte saw it too. Her rifle swung toward Garrison, but she did not have a clear shot. The man holding Sarah was in the way, and any missed bullet could kill the woman they were trying to save. Time seemed to slow. Nathan's training from the war came flooding back, the calculations a soldier made in the instant before violence. Distance, angle, wind, probability of success, acceptable losses. Sarah met his eyes across the space between them. In her gaze he saw acceptance. She knew she was going to die, and she was making peace with it. "No," Nathan thought. "Not today. Not while I still draw breath." He shifted his aim from Garrison to the man holding Sarah. A harder shot, the target partially obscured, but Nathan had been a sharpshooter in the war, had made impossible shots under worse conditions. He squeezed the trigger. The rifle bucked. The bullet crossed the distance in a fraction of a second, entering the man's skull just above his right eye. He was dead before he began to fall. Sarah dropped as the corpse released her, covering her head with her hands. Garrison spun toward Nathan, raising his gun, but before he could fire, a shot rang out from the trees. Garrison jerked sideways, a bloom of red spreading across his chest. Margaret Garrison stepped from the shadows, smoke rising from the rifle in her hands. Her face was pale but determined. "No more," Margaret said, her voice shaking. "You will not kill anyone else, Theodore." Charlotte fired, striking Garrison's shoulder. Ruby fired, hitting his leg. 3 bullets had found their mark. Garrison staggered backward, blood spreading across his chest, shoulder, and leg. His gun fell from nerveless fingers. He staggered backward, his gun falling from nerveless fingers. Blood spread across his expensive suit, dark against the fine fabric. He looked down at himself with an expression of profound surprise, as if he could not quite believe his mortality. Then his legs buckled, and he collapsed, gasping like a landed fish. The remaining gunmen, seeing their employer down, and federal marshals surrounding them, threw down their weapons. The fight was over. Nathan lowered his rifle, his hands shaking with adrenaline. Around him the house settled into an eerie quiet after hours of constant gunfire. Smoke hung in the air, acrid and thick. Charlotte ran down the stairs to Sarah, pulling the younger woman into her arms. Sarah was crying, great racking sobs of relief and terror finally released. Nathan followed more slowly, his rifle still ready in case any of Garrison's men proved foolish. But they were beaten, hands raised, waiting for the marshals to take them into custody. Hayes entered the house, his face gray with pain, but his eyes sharp. Nathan noted fresh blood on the marshal's shoulder. The ride must have reopened his wound. "You should be resting," Nathan said. "I will rest when this is done," Hayes replied. He looked down at Garrison, who was still breathing through barely. "Get a doctor. I want him alive to stand trial." One of the marshals ran to comply. Nathan knelt beside Garrison, checking the wounds. Serious, but probably not fatal if treated quickly. The man would live to face justice. Garrison's eyes focused on Nathan with an effort. "You think you have won." His voice was a wet whisper, blood bubbling at his lips. "I have friends, powerful friends. They will make this disappear." "Your friends are already running," Margaret Garrison said, entering the house and staring down at her husband with contempt. "When I told the territorial governor about the asylum, about everything you did, he started investigating. Your judges, your sheriffs, your politicians, they are all turning on you, trying to save themselves. You are finished, Theodore." Garrison tried to speak, but blood filled his throat, choking him. Nathan turned away, unwilling to watch the man drown in his own fluids. A doctor would arrive soon. Until then, Garrison could suffer. The 5 women gathered in what remained of the living room, supporting each other, checking for wounds. They were battered, exhausted, smoke-stained, and bloodied. But they were alive. All of them. Nathan felt Charlotte's hand slip into his. Her fingers were cold, trembling with reaction now that the danger had passed. He squeezed gently, letting her know without words that he understood, that she had been magnificent, that she had saved them all. Marshal Hayes organized his men, securing prisoners, collecting weapons, beginning the documentation that would be required for trial. He paused beside Nathan, his expression grateful. "Thank you," he said simply, "for keeping them alive, for standing when you could have run." "They are worth standing for," Nathan replied. Hayes glanced at Charlotte, something knowing in his tired eyes. "Yes, I believe they are." The next hours passed in a blur of activity. The doctor arrived and stabilized Garrison, though the man would be weeks recovering from his wounds. The federal marshals took statements, gathered evidence, processed prisoners. Margaret Garrison sat with the 5 widows, sharing her own story of survival and escape, creating bonds of shared trauma and triumph. As the sun began to set, painting the smoke-stained sky in shades of orange and purple, Nathan stood on what remained of his front porch and surveyed the damage. Bullet holes pocked every wall. Windows were shattered. The front door hung from broken hinges. The barn was a pile of smoking ash. But the house still stood, and the people inside it still breathed. Charlotte joined him, 2 cups of coffee in her hands. She offered one to Nathan, and they stood together in comfortable silence, watching the marshals prepare to transport Garrison and his men back to Denver for trial. "Your brother would be proud," Charlotte said quietly. Nathan thought of Jeremiah, of the last letter he had written asking Nathan to protect what he could not. "Would be, I think he knew. I think that is why he left me this place, to turn you into a target, to give me a reason to live." Nathan sipped the coffee, grateful for its warmth. "For 8 years I have been going through the motions, eating, sleeping, working, but not really living. Today, fighting to protect you and the others, I felt alive again, fully alive, and I have Jeremiah to thank for that. And us." "What about us?" Nathan turned to look at her, seeing the vulnerability beneath her strength. "What do you want there to be?" Charlotte set down her coffee and faced him directly. "I want to stop running. I want to build something real. I want to wake up in a place that feels like home, with people who feel like family. And I want you to be part of that. Even though I failed my first family. You did not fail them, Nathan. Disease failed them. Fate failed them. You were just a man doing his best to provide." Charlotte's hand found his cheek gentle despite the calluses from rifle work. "And now you are a man who has saved 5 women from a monster, who has given us back our lives. Do not tell me you are not worthy of happiness when you have created it for others." Nathan leaned into her touch, feeling something inside him crack and give way. A wall he had built around his heart, brick by painful brick over 8 years of self-imposed isolation. Charlotte's words, her presence, her impossible strength, all of it worked together to bring that wall tumbling down. "I do not know how to do this," he admitted. "How to love again. How to risk caring when caring has hurt so much." "None of us do," Charlotte said. "We are all wounded, all scarred. But maybe that is the point. Maybe people who have survived the worst can appreciate the best in ways others cannot." She kissed him then there on the ruined porch with the smell of smoke and blood still heavy in the air. It was not a kiss of passion or desperate need. It was a kiss of promise, of 2 people choosing to hope despite every reason not to. When they separated, Nathan saw tears on Charlotte's face, but she was smiling. "So what happens now?" she asked. "Now," Nathan said, looking at the damaged house we rebuild. "The structure is sound. The foundation is solid. We can repair the rest." I was not asking about the house. Nathan smiled, understanding. Neither was I. That night they gathered around the kitchen table one last time before the marshals departed with their prisoners. Hayes accepted Grace's offer of hot food, his wounded shoulder properly bandaged now by the doctor. Margaret Garrison sat with them, finally free after 5 years of captivity. Though the haunted look in her eyes suggested freedom would take time to feel real. "What will you do now?" Nathan asked her. Margaret considered the question, her fingers wrapped around a cup of tea. "Testify against Theodore, make sure he pays for what he did to me and to everyone else. After that," she shrugged, "I have money property that was mine before we married. Perhaps I will use it to help other women escape bad situations. God knows there are enough of them." "That is good work," Grace said quietly. "Important work." "What about you 5?" Margaret asked. "Will you stay here?" The women looked at each other, a silent conversation passing between them. Finally, Charlotte spoke. "If Nathan will have us, yes. We would like to stay. This place has become home in a way Denver never was. Here we are, not victims or widows or women who need protecting. We are just ourselves." Nathan felt warmth spread through his chest. "You are welcome to stay as long as you wish, all of you. This house is too big for one man anyway." Ruby grinned, her fierce expression softening. "Good. Because someone needs to teach you how to properly care for horses. Your mare was practically feral when we arrived. And the garden is a disaster," Sarah added. "Come spring we will need to completely replant." "The accounts are a mess too," Vivian said. "No organization at all. It will take months to straighten out. And your cooking." Grace said with gentle diplomacy could use some improvement. Nathan laughed, the sound feeling strange and wonderful after years of grim silence. "So I am being tolerated for my property and my poor housekeeping skills." "And your shooting," Charlotte added, her eyes warm. "That was rather impressive today." "High praise," Nathan said dryly. Hayes stood wincing slightly as the movement pulled his wounded shoulder. "I should get these prisoners back to Denver before they recover enough courage to cause trouble." He looked at Nathan, extending his hand. "Thank you again. For everything." Nathan shook the offered hand. "Will Garrison face justice? Real justice? With Margaret's testimony and all the evidence we have gathered?" Hayes nodded grimly. "He will hang, and his network of corruption will hang with him. This is the beginning of real change in the territory." After the marshals left, taking Garrison and his surviving men with them, the house felt almost too quiet. The women drifted to their rooms exhausted by the day's violence and emotion. Nathan walked through the damaged house cataloging what needed repair. The work would be extensive. Windows replaced, walls patched, doors rehung. The barn would need to be completely rebuilt. But it was possible. All of it was possible. Charlotte found him in the study examining a bullet hole in Jeremiah's desk. "You should sleep," she said. "So should you." "I cannot. Every time I close my eyes I see it all again. The shooting the blood Sarah with that gun to her head." Charlotte wrapped her arms around herself. "I keep thinking how close we came to losing everything. But we did not." Nathan said, "We held. We survived. That is what matters." "Is it?" Charlotte looked at him, her eyes troubled. 9 men died today, Nathan. 9. Yes, they were trying to kill us, but they are still dead. Does that not bother you? Nathan moved closer, taking her gently by the shoulders. "It bothers me that it had to happen at all, but I will not apologize for protecting you and the others. Those men made their choice when they took Garrison's money. We made ours when we decided to stand and fight. I am at peace with that choice. I wish I could be. Give it time." Nathan pulled her into an embrace, feeling her gradually relax against him. "The war taught me that survival sometimes requires terrible choices. The key is not to let those choices define you. You are not a killer, Charlotte. You are a woman who refused to be a victim. Never forget the difference." They stood together in the quiet study, finding comfort in shared presence. Outside, night had fully fallen, stars brilliant in the clear November sky. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, repairs to make, wounds to heal, futures to plan. But tonight, they were alive. They had won, and that was enough. Over the following days, a rhythm established itself. Nathan and Ruby worked on temporary repairs to make the house weatherproof before winter truly set in. Charlotte and Vivian traveled to town for supplies, their names now known as the women who had helped bring down Theodore Garrison. Sarah and Grace organized the house, creating order from chaos. The story spread quickly through the territory. The 5 widows who had fought a small war against corruption and won. Journalists came wanting interviews. Charlotte politely but firmly sent them away. They had lived through enough. They did not need to relive it for public entertainment. A week after the battle, Marshal Hayes returned with news. Garrison had been formally charged with 17 counts of murder along with numerous other crimes. His trial was set for January, and Hayes was confident of conviction. More importantly, Hayes brought documents, legal papers declaring the 5 women fully cleared of any wrongdoing related to their attack on Garrison. They were free not just in practice, but in law. That night, they celebrated with a dinner that Grace declared the finest she had ever prepared. It was probably an exaggeration, but the joy in her eyes made it true enough. They ate and talked and laughed, the sound filling the house with life it had not known in years. After dinner, as the others cleaned up, Nathan and Charlotte walked outside. The night was cold but clear, the stars overhead like scattered diamonds. Nathan had been thinking about this moment for days, gathering courage for a question that terrified him more than Garrison's 20 gunmen had. "Charlotte, there is something I need to ask you." She turned to face him, her expression curious. "What is it? I know this is soon. I know we have both lost people we loved, and those losses do not just disappear. But I also know that I have spent 8 years being alone, and I do not want to be alone anymore. So I am asking, hoping really that you might consider—" He trailed off suddenly, uncertain how to continue. Charlotte waited, patient and attentive. Nathan took a breath and tried again. "Will you marry me? Not right away. We can wait as long as you need. But someday when you are ready, will you consider becoming my wife?" Charlotte's eyes widened. For a moment she simply stared at him, and Nathan feared he had miscalculated badly, had pushed too hard too fast. Then she smiled, and it was like sunrise. "Yes," she said simply. "When I am ready, yes, I will marry you." Relief and joy flooded through Nathan in equal measure. He pulled her close, kissing her with all the emotion he could not find words for. Charlotte kissed him back, her arms wrapping around his neck, holding him as if she would never let go. When they finally separated, both breathing hard, Charlotte laughed. The sound was pure and bright, free of the shadows that usually haunted her. "Thomas would have liked you," she said. "He always said I needed someone stubborn enough to match me." "Emma would have liked you too," Nathan replied. "She never had patience for weak women. She would have admired your strength." "They are probably watching us right now," Charlotte mused. "Probably arguing about whether we are moving too fast or too slow. Definitely arguing." Nathan agreed. "But I think they would be happy for us. I think they would want us to live. I think so too." They stood together under the stars, two wounded people choosing hope over despair, life over mere existence. Behind them, the damaged house stood as testament to survival. Ahead of them, uncertain but full of possibility, lay a future they would build together. Inside, the other women were singing, an old hymn, the melody rising into the night. Ruby's strong alto, Sarah's sweet soprano, Vivian's steady mezzo, Grace's warm contralto, voices blending and harmonizing, creating something beautiful from individual threads of sound. Charlotte took Nathan's hand. "Come on, let us join them." They went inside into the warmth and light and laughter. The house that had been so empty now overflowed with life. 6 people who had every reason to give up had instead chosen to endure. And in that choosing, they had created something more valuable than mere survival. They had created family, not born of blood, but forged in fire. Not perfect, but real. Nathan looked around at the 5 women who had changed his life so completely. At Charlotte, his promised future. At Ruby, fierce and loyal. At Sarah, gentle and determined. At Vivian, calculating and wise. At Grace, maternal and strong. His family, chosen and cherished. Jeremiah had known. Somehow his brother had known that this was what Nathan needed. Not solitude or penance, but connection. Not isolation, but purpose. Not death in life, but life in all its messy, beautiful, painful glory. "Thank you," Nathan thought, sending the words out to wherever his brother might be. "Thank you for understanding me better than I understood myself." That night, Nathan slept deeply and dreamlessly for the first time in 8 years. And when he woke to the smell of coffee and bacon, to the sound of women's voices and morning bird song, he felt something he had thought lost forever. He felt at peace. The days turned to weeks. Winter settled over the ranch in earnest, bringing snow and cold winds. But inside the house, warmth prevailed. They worked together, ate together, lived together in a harmony that surprised them all. Charlotte proved to have unexpected talents for organization, turning the household into a model of efficiency. Ruby's skills with horses led to plans for a breeding program come spring. Sarah's medical knowledge, learned from her doctor husband, made her the unofficial healer for the surrounding area. Vivian's financial acumen transformed the ranch's accounts into profitable ventures. Grace's cooking became legendary, with neighbors riding for hours just to taste her bread. And Nathan, who had thought himself used up and purposeless, found new meaning in teaching, protecting, and building. He taught the women advanced marksmanship, wilderness survival, defensive tactics. In turn, they taught him to laugh again, to hope again, to believe that tomorrow might be better than today. In January, they received word that Theodore Garrison had been convicted on all counts. The judge sentenced him to death by hanging, to be carried out in February. Margaret Garrison attended the trial, her testimony damning and detailed. When it was over, she came to the ranch for a visit, finding solace in the company of women who understood her pain. "You should be proud," Margaret told them. "You brought down a monster that terrorized this territory for a decade. You gave voice to victims who had been silenced. You changed things." "We just wanted justice for our husbands," Charlotte said quietly. "And you got it." Margaret smiled, though sadness lingered in her eyes. "Now you get to have the rest of your lives. Do not waste them on anger or regret. Build something good. That is the best revenge against people like Theodore." The advice was sound. They took it to heart. In March, as spring began to push back winter's grip, Nathan and Charlotte were married. The ceremony was simple, held in the house with only their chosen family present. Ruby served as Charlotte's witness. A local circuit judge, a friend of Marshall Hayes, performed the service. Nathan had worried that standing before a judge speaking vows would feel like a betrayal of Emma. But when he looked into Charlotte's eyes and promised to love and honor her, it felt right. Not a replacement of what he had lost, but an addition to what he had been given. Charlotte wore a simple blue dress that Grace had helped her sew. She carried wildflowers that Sarah had gathered from the meadow. She looked beautiful and fierce and utterly herself. When the judge pronounced them husband and wife, Nathan kissed his new bride to cheers from the women who had become their family. It was not a large wedding or an expensive one, but it was perfect in its honesty and joy. That night, Nathan and Charlotte moved into the master bedroom together. The room Jeremiah had built with its wide windows and generous space. They lay together in the darkness, not speaking, just existing in shared presence. "Are you happy?" Charlotte asked eventually. Nathan considered the question seriously. For years he had thought happiness was something he did not deserve, a luxury for people who had not failed as catastrophically as he had. But lying here with Charlotte's head on his shoulder, knowing that 4 other women slept safely under his roof, knowing that tomorrow would bring work and laughter and purpose, he realized something. Happiness was not something you deserved or did not deserve. It was something you chose, a decision to keep living fully despite all the reasons not to. "Yes," Nathan said, "I am happy. Are you?" Charlotte's answer came without hesitation. "More than I ever thought I could be again." They fell asleep, entwined, 2 wounded souls who had found healing in each other. Outside, the spring wind whispered through the pines. Inside, the house settled into peaceful quiet. The future stretched before them, uncertain but no longer frightening. They would face it together, all 6 of them. A family forged not by blood but by choice, bound not by obligation but by love. And that, Nathan thought as sleep claimed him, was enough. More than enough. It was everything. February brought cold winds and heavy snow to the Colorado Territory, but inside Blackwood Ranch, life had found its rhythm. 2 months had passed since Garrison's capture and trial. Nathan stood on the rebuilt porch watching the sunrise paint the eastern sky in shades of gold and crimson. The landscape was still winter brown, but inside the house warmth and life prevailed. 3 months had passed since the battle that had nearly destroyed them all. 3 months of rebuilding, healing, and learning to live rather than merely survive. The house bore scars from the violence, bullet holes patched but still visible, but it also bore signs of new life. Curtains in the windows, flowers in boxes that Sarah tended with devotion, the sound of laughter that came often now. Charlotte emerged from the house, 2 cups of coffee in her hands. She had taken to this morning ritual, joining Nathan for the quiet minutes before the day's work began. She handed him a cup and leaned against the railing beside him, her shoulder touching his. "You are thinking too loud," she said, a smile in her voice. "I can hear it from inside." "Just counting my blessings," Nathan replied, "making sure they are real. They are real." Charlotte sipped her coffee. "So is the work waiting for us. Ruby wants to start breaking the new horses today. Vivian needs your signature on the supply orders. Grace is planning something elaborate for dinner and will need someone to hunt fresh meat. And you, what do you need?" Charlotte turned to look at him, her green eyes warm in the morning light. "Just this. A few minutes of peace before the chaos begins." Nathan kissed her forehead, breathing in the scent of her hair. Lavender and wood smoke, familiar now and beloved. He had not thought he could love again after Emma had not believed his heart capable of opening to another person. But Charlotte had proven him wrong in the best possible way. The sound of hoofbeats interrupted the moment. Nathan's hand moved instinctively to the pistol at his hip, old reflexes from the war and the recent battle dying hard. But it was only Marshal Hayes riding up the path at an easy pace. Hayes had become a regular visitor, stopping by every few weeks to check on the women and bring news from Denver. The marshal looked better than he had in months, his wounded shoulder healed and his face less drawn with stress. Garrison's conviction had lifted a weight from him. "Morning," Hayes called as he dismounted. "Hope I am not interrupting." "Never," Charlotte said, though Nathan noticed her hand had also moved toward the rifle leaning against the wall. They were all more cautious now, all quicker to prepare for violence, even in moments of peace. Some scars ran deeper than bullet holes. Hayes tied his horse to the rail and accepted the coffee that Charlotte offered. His expression was troubled, and Nathan felt his contentment curdle into unease. "What is wrong?" Nathan asked. Hayes took a long drink of coffee before answering. Garrison escaped. 3 days ago, the night before his scheduled execution. The words hung in the morning air like gun smoke. Nathan felt Charlotte go rigid beside him. From inside the house came the sound of footsteps as the other women, hearing Hayes's voice, came to investigate. When Nathan's voice was flat, already shifting into the cold, tactical mindset that had kept him alive through war and siege. 3 days ago. Hayes's jaw clenched with frustration. He had help, Deputy Cole and 2 other guards. They killed 4 men, breaking him out of the Denver jail. By the time we discovered what had happened, they had a 12-hour lead. Ruby appeared in the doorway, her face hard. "Where is he now?" Hayes met her fierce blue eyes. "We do not know. He could be anywhere, could be halfway to California by now. Or," he paused clearly, reluctant to continue, "or he is coming here," Vivian finished, emerging from the house with Sarah and Grace behind her. "To finish what he started. We have to assume that is his intent," Hayes said. "The man lost everything because of what happened here, his wealth, his power, his freedom. Men like Garrison do not forgive that kind of humiliation." "How long before he arrives?" Charlotte's voice was steady, but Nathan could feel her trembling against him. "If he is coming directly, he could be here as soon as tomorrow. If he is gathering more men first, we might have a few days." Hayes looked around at the 6 of them, his expression grave. "I brought 10 deputies with me. They are setting up a perimeter now. And I sent word to the territorial governor requesting military support, but that could take a week or more." "So we are on our own again," Ruby said. "Good. We know how that ends." "Last time we barely survived," Sarah said quietly. "And that was with surprise on our side. If Garrison knows what to expect, then we make sure he does not get what he expects." Nathan interrupted. "We have advantages now. We know he is coming. We have had 3 months to prepare better defenses, and we are not the same people we were in November." He was right about that. The women who had fought so desperately to survive the first siege were harder now, more skilled, more dangerous. Ruby had become an expert markswoman. Charlotte's tactical thinking rivaled Nathan's own. Even gentle Sarah could hit a target at 200 yards without flinching. But Garrison was also different. No longer constrained by any pretense of civilization or law, a man with nothing to lose and everything to avenge. "We need to prepare," Nathan said. "Hayes, where are your deputies positioned?" 4 at the tree line to the north, 3 watching the road from the south, 2 on the ridge line to the east, and 1 with the horses. Hayes pulled out a map and spread it on the porch railing. "We have good sight lines, but we are spread thin. If Garrison brings enough men, he could punch through in several places." "Then we do not let him bring men," Vivian said. Her analytical mind was already working the problem. "Garrison escaped 3 days ago with 3 men. He will need time to recruit more. Time he might not want to spend if he thinks we are vulnerable." "You want to bait him," Charlotte said. "Make him think we are unprepared so he attacks with his small force rather than waiting to gather an army." Vivian nodded. "Exactly. We let word slip that we think he fled the territory, that we have relaxed our guard. He hears that his ego will demand he prove us wrong immediately," Risky Hayes said. "If we are wrong about his numbers, we will be facing a larger force than we can handle." "We faced 20 men last time with 6 defenders," Ruby pointed out. "Now we have 16 defenders and better fortifications. I like our odds." Nathan studied the map, his military experience cataloging angles and approaches. The ranch sat in a natural defensive position, but Garrison knew that now. He would not make the same mistakes twice. "We cannot just defend," Nathan said slowly. "We need to take the fight to him, hit him before he reaches the house." "An ambush," Charlotte said, understanding immediately. "We know the terrain. We choose the ground." Hayes frowned. That would leave the house vulnerable. Not if we split our forces. Nathan's finger traced paths on the map. Half stay here to defend, half move out to set up positions along the likely approach routes. We catch Garrison in a crossfire before he even sees the ranch, and if he splits his own forces, then we have divided his attention and reduced his ability to concentrate his attack. Nathan looked up from the map, meeting each person's eyes in turn. This is not without risk, but waiting for him to come to us to choose when and how to attack that is riskier. Charlotte's hand found his, her grip strong and sure. I agree with Nathan. We have been reactive too long. Time to be proactive. The others nodded their agreement, even Sarah, though fear flickered in her eyes. They had all learned that courage was not the absence of fear, but the willingness to act despite it. The next hours passed in focused preparation. Hayes's deputies were pulled back to tighter defensive positions. The women checked weapons and ammunition. Nathan and Ruby scouted the approaches to the ranch, identifying ideal ambush sites. By afternoon, they had a plan. Charlotte, Ruby, Nathan and Hayes would form the ambush team, positioning themselves along the main road 2 miles from the ranch. Vivian, Sarah Grace, and 6 deputies would remain at the house as a defensive reserve. If Garrison somehow got past the ambush, he would find the ranch still defended. That evening, as the sun set in a blaze of orange and purple, the ambush team prepared to move out. Nathan checked his rifle for the 10th time, a nervous habit from his war days. Beside him, Charlotte did the same, her movements precise and economical. "If this goes wrong," she said quietly, "if Garrison kills me, I want you to know that these last 3 months have been the happiest of my life." Nathan turned to face her fully. "It will not go wrong. We have planned for every contingency. Plans do not survive contact with the enemy. You taught me that." She was right. He had taught her that, along with a dozen other hard lessons learned in Blood and Fire. But he had also taught her something else. No, Nathan agreed. Plans do not survive, but people do. We survive. That is what we do. Charlotte smiled, though it did not quite reach her eyes. "Then let us make sure Garrison does not." They moved out. As darkness fell, 4 shadows slipping through the forest like ghosts. The moon was nearly full, providing enough light to navigate by, but also making them visible to watching eyes. They moved carefully, using every scrap of cover until they reached the position Nathan had selected. A narrow section of the road where trees pressed close on both sides. Any riders would be forced into a tight column, unable to spread out or maneuver. Perfect killing ground. They settled in to wait. Ruby on one side of the road with Hayes, Charlotte, and Nathan on the other. Each pair had overlapping fields of fire able to support each other while maintaining independent lines of retreat. Hours passed. The night grew cold and Nathan felt old war memories stirring. How many times had he done this? Waited in darkness for an enemy who might or might not come, too many to count. But this time was different. This time he was not fighting for a government or a cause he barely understood. This time he was fighting for home, for family. Charlotte shifted beside him, her shoulder pressing against his. "You are thinking too loud again," she whispered, remembering the war. The waiting was always the worst part. At least then you knew the enemy would come. Now we are guessing. Nathan was about to respond when he heard it, the faint sound of hoofbeats on the dirt road. He tensed his hand, tightening on his rifle. Beside him, Charlotte went utterly still, all her attention focused on the approaching sounds. The riders came into view around the bend. 4 men on horseback moving at a steady pace but not racing. Even in the moonlight, Nathan recognized the lead rider. Theodore Garrison, somehow looking immaculate despite 3 days on the run. The man's ability to maintain appearances was almost supernatural. Behind Garrison rode Deputy Cole and 2 other men Nathan did not recognize. Only 4. Vivian's gambit had worked. Garrison had come immediately, unable to resist the chance to strike while his enemies were supposedly unprepared. Nathan raised his rifle slowly, careful to make no sound. Across the road he saw Ruby doing the same. Hayes had his weapon up as well. Charlotte pressed close beside him, her own rifle aimed and steady. They let the riders get deeper into the ambush zone, waiting until retreat would be as dangerous as advance. Nathan's finger rested on the trigger, his breathing slow and controlled. Then Ruby fired. The night exploded with gunfire. Ruby's first shot took one of the unknown men in the chest, tumbling him from his saddle. Nathan fired a heartbeat later, aiming for Cole. The bullet struck the deputy's shoulder, spinning him sideways, but not unhorsing him. Charlotte's rifle cracked, and Garrison's horse screamed and went down, throwing its rider. The last gunman returned fire blindly, his bullets whipping through the trees. Hayes's rifle boomed, and the man fell. In seconds, it was over. 2 of Garrison's men dead, Cole wounded and trying to control his panicked horse, and Garrison on the ground, scrambling for cover. "Surrender." Hayes called out, his marshal's authority ringing in his voice. "You are under arrest." Garrison's response was a pistol shot that came close enough to Hayes that the marshal had to duck. The man was not surrendering. Not today. Probably not ever. Nathan sighted on Garrison's position behind a fallen log. He could end this now. 1 bullet and the nightmare would be over. His finger began to tighten on the trigger. Then Charlotte's hand touched his arm. "Wait," she whispered. "Let me." Nathan understood. Garrison had killed her husband, had hunted her for months, had nearly destroyed her life. She deserved this more than anyone. He lowered his rifle, giving her the shot. Charlotte took her time, her breathing steady, her aim precise. Garrison raised his head to fire again at Hayes. Charlotte squeezed the trigger. The bullet struck Garrison's pistol, tearing it from his hand and probably breaking several fingers. Garrison yelped in pain and rage, cradling his wounded hand. "Now it is over," Charlotte called out. "Surrender, or the next bullet goes somewhere more permanent." For a long moment Garrison did not move. Then slowly he raised his good hand above the log. "I yield." Hayes and Ruby secured Garrison and the wounded Cole, while Nathan and Charlotte maintained overwatch. The 2 dead gunmen were left where they fell, their weapons collected but their bodies waiting for daylight and a wagon. Cole, pale from blood loss and fear, looked up at Hayes. "I want to make a deal. I will testify against Garrison for everything. The murders, the escapes, all of it." Hayes's expression was cold. "The only deal you are getting is life in prison instead of hanging, and that is only if your testimony puts Garrison in the ground for good." Garrison glared at his captors with undimmed hatred. "You think this changes anything? I will escape again. I have resources you cannot imagine, friends in places you will never reach." "Your friends abandoned you," Hayes said flatly. "When word got out that you escaped, every corrupt official you ever bribed came forward to testify against you in exchange for immunity. You have no friends anymore, Garrison, only enemies and the hangman's noose." Something in Garrison's face crumbled at that. The realization that he was truly alone, truly finished. For a moment he looked old and small rather than dangerous, but then his eyes found Charlotte, and the hatred returned with renewed intensity. "This is your fault," he hissed. "You and those other 4 bitches. You destroyed me." "No," Charlotte said calmly. "You destroyed yourself. We just refused to be destroyed with you." They bound Garrison securely and began the march back to the ranch. Nathan kept his rifle ready, not trusting the man to stay beaten. Garrison had surprised them before. He could do it again. But the fight seemed to have gone out of their prisoner. He walked in sullen silence, his wounded hand leaving a trail of blood drops on the dirt road. As they approached the ranch, Nathan saw lights blazing in every window. Vivian, Sarah, and Grace stood on the porch with rifles ready to repel an attack that was not coming. When they saw the ambush team returning with prisoners, relief flooded their faces. "Is it truly over?" Sarah asked, her voice small and hopeful. "It is over," Hayes confirmed. "Garrison is going back to Denver, and this time I will personally ensure he never escapes again." They secured Garrison and Cole in the reinforced cellar, posting guards and rotating shifts. Hayes sent one of his deputies riding hard for Denver to bring back a proper prisoner transport and more men. Until then, they would maintain maximum security. That night, exhausted but unwilling to sleep, the 6 original inhabitants of Blackwood Ranch gathered in the kitchen. Grace made coffee, strong and bitter. They sat around the table in companionable silence, each processing what had happened in their own way. "He looked so small," Sarah said eventually. "When we put him in the cellar. So ordinary." "Evil often does," Grace replied. "That is what makes it dangerous. We expect monsters to look monstrous, but they look like anyone else." "What happens to him now?" Ruby asked, directing the question at Hayes. "Trial," Hayes said. "Again. With even more evidence this time. His escape the guards, he killed the men he brought with him tonight. The judge will have no choice but to expedite the execution." "How long?" Hayes shrugged. "A month, maybe less. They will not risk another escape," Good Vivian said flatly. "The sooner he hangs, the sooner we can stop looking over our shoulders." The conversation drifted to other topics. Plans for the ranch now that spring had arrived, Ruby's horse breeding program, Sarah's garden, Vivian's ideas for diversifying their income, normal things, peaceful things, the kinds of conversations people had when they were not running for their lives. Nathan listened with half his attention, the other half monitoring the sounds of the night. Old habits died hard, but gradually, as the hours passed and nothing disturbed the peace, he felt himself relaxing. Charlotte leaned against him, her head on his shoulder. "We did it," she whispered. "We actually survived." "We did more than survive," Nathan replied. "We won." The next morning brought a surprise. Margaret Garrison arrived with the deputy Hayes had sent to Denver, along with a wagon and 6 additional marshals. She looked older than when Nathan had last seen her, lines of stress etched deep around her eyes. "I had to come," she explained as Hayes helped her down from the wagon. "I had to see him, to know it was real." "He is in the cellar," Hayes said. "Do you want to speak with him?" Margaret considered, then shook her head. "No, I have nothing to say to Theodore that has not already been said. I just needed to see with my own eyes that he is truly caught." She turned to the 5 women standing on the porch. "You did what I could not. You stood up to him and won. I am in your debt." "You owe us nothing," Charlotte said gently. "We all fought the same monster. We just had different battlefields." Margaret's eyes filled with tears. "I wish I had been as brave as you 5. I let him control me for so long." Grace came down from the porch and took Margaret's hands. "Survival takes many forms, Annie. You survived in the only way you could. There is no shame in that." The marshals loaded Garrison and Cole into the reinforced wagon Hayes had brought. Heavy iron chains secured both prisoners with armed guards positioned to prevent any escape attempt. Garrison looked diminished in his chains, no longer the powerful man who had terrorized a territory, but just another criminal heading for the gallows. As the wagon prepared to leave, Garrison called out to Charlotte, "This is not over. Even if they hang me, there will be others. Men like me do not stay gone." "You are right," Charlotte called back. "There will always be evil men, but there will also always be people willing to fight them. And we just proved which side wins." The wagon rolled away, carrying Garrison toward justice and death. Nathan watched it disappear down the road and felt a chapter of his life closing. The man who had killed his brother was finally facing consequences. The women who had become his family were finally safe. The long nightmare was ending. But even as relief washed over him, Nathan knew Charlotte's words to Garrison were true. There would always be new threats, new challenges, new battles to fight. Peace was not a destination, but a constant effort. Margaret stayed at the ranch for a week, finding solace in the company of women who understood what she had endured. She spent long hours talking with Charlotte and the others, sharing stories of survival and abuse, of finding strength in the darkest moments. On the day she prepared to leave, Margaret pulled Nathan aside. "Your brother helped me, you know, before he died. He found evidence of Theodore's crimes against me, evidence that eventually led to my freedom. Jeremiah was a good man who deserved better than the death he got. He would be glad to know his work mattered," Nathan said, "that it led to something good. Tell the women," Margaret said, gesturing toward Charlotte and the others, "that they have inspired me. I am going to use my freedom and my resources to help other women escape situations like mine. Open a refuge where they can be safe while they rebuild their lives. That is good work, important work. It is the least I can do." Margaret smiled, and for the first time Nathan saw genuine peace in her expression. We all have to find meaning in our suffering. This is mine. After Margaret left, the rhythm of ranch life reasserted itself. Spring turned to summer, and the land bloomed with life. Ruby's horse breeding program began in earnest, with several promising foals born. Sarah's garden produced more vegetables than they could eat, leading to trade with neighboring ranches. Vivian's financial management turned the ranch profitable for the first time in years. Grace's cooking became famous throughout the region, with visitors sometimes arriving unannounced, hoping for an invitation to dinner. And Nathan, who had expected to live out his days in lonely isolation, found himself at the center of a thriving household. He taught the women everything he knew about ranching, hunting, and survival. They taught him about joy, community, and the healing power of chosen family. In April, as spring brought new life to the ranch, word came from Denver. Theodore Garrison had been executed by hanging. The event had been public, attended by hundreds of people whose lives he had damaged or destroyed. He had died cursing everyone who had brought him down, unrepentant to the last. When Charlotte heard the news, she walked out to the hill where they had buried Jeremiah. Nathan followed, giving her space but offering silent support. She stood looking at the grave marker they had erected, a simple stone with Jeremiah's name and the words, "He died protecting what mattered." "It is done," Charlotte said quietly. "Thomas has justice. Jeremiah has justice. We all have justice." "Does it feel like you thought it would?" Nathan asked. Charlotte considered. "No, I thought I would feel triumph or satisfaction. But mostly I just feel tired and grateful that it is over." Nathan put his arm around her shoulders, and she leaned into him. "We can rest now, build the life we want, rather than constantly defending ourselves." "What kind of life do you want?" Charlotte turned to look at him, her green eyes warm in the summer sun. "One full of small moments. Morning coffee on the porch, evening walks through the meadow, Sunday dinners with our family. The kind of life Thomas and I dreamed about but never got to have. We can have that," Nathan promised. "We have earned that." They walked back to the house together, where the sounds of dinner preparation and friendly conversation spilled out through the open windows. This place that had been so empty when Nathan inherited it now overflowed with life and warmth and love. That evening, they gathered for one of Grace's legendary dinners. Roast beef with vegetables from Sarah's garden, bread so fresh it steamed when cut, and a pie made from wild blackberries Ruby had picked. The food was delicious, but the company was better. After dinner, as they sat around the table enjoying coffee and conversation, Nathan felt compelled to speak. He stood tapping his cup for attention. "I want to say something." He began, feeling awkward but determined. 3 months ago, 5 women appeared at my door asking for shelter. I said yes, partly because my brother would have wanted me to, but mostly because I had nothing else to live for. I was a ghost in my own life, going through the motions but feeling nothing. Charlotte reached for his hand, squeezing gently. "You 5 gave me back my life," Nathan continued. "You showed me that family is not just blood, that love can grow even in the hardest soil, that there is always a reason to keep fighting. So I want to thank you, all of you, for choosing to stay, for trusting me to protect you, for becoming the family I did not know I needed." Ruby raised her coffee cup. "To family, chosen and cherished." "To family," the others echoed, clinking their cups together. Grace wiped tears from her eyes. "You know, when my Robert died, I thought my life was over. I was 40 years old and convinced my best days were behind me. But sitting here with all of you, I realize I was wrong. My best days are right now." Sarah nodded. "I was so afraid after Peter died, afraid of everything, afraid to hope, to try to live. But you all taught me that fear is just a feeling, not a command. I am still afraid sometimes, but I do not let it stop me anymore." Vivian, usually so composed and analytical, had to clear her throat before speaking. "I never had children with Henry. We wanted them, but it never happened. I used to think that meant I would never have a family. But I was wrong. You are my family, every one of you." Charlotte stood, moving to stand beside Nathan. "When Thomas died, I thought love had died with him. I thought I would spend the rest of my life alone, unwilling to risk my heart again." She looked at Nathan, her eyes shining. "But you proved me wrong. You showed me that love does not replace love. It adds to it. Thomas will always be part of me, but so will you. Both are true. Both are real." Nathan pulled her close, kissing her forehead. The table erupted in good-natured teasing and laughter, the serious moment giving way to the comfortable chaos of family. As the evening wound down and people drifted to their rooms, Nathan stood on the porch watching the stars emerge. Charlotte joined him as she always did, bringing 2 glasses of whiskey this time instead of coffee. Celebrating, Nathan asked, accepting a glass. "Living," Charlotte corrected. "There is a difference." They sipped their whiskey in comfortable silence, the sounds of the summer night surrounding them. Crickets chirping, a distant owl hooting, the wind rustling through the pines. "Do you ever think about her?" Charlotte asked. "Emma." "Every day," Nathan admitted. "But it does not hurt the way it used to. Now when I remember her, I can smile, can be grateful for the time we had, rather than bitter about the time we lost. That is healing." "Yes." Nathan turned to face Charlotte. "What about you? Do you think about Thomas?" "All the time." Charlotte smiled softly. "I imagine him watching us, probably laughing at how we stumbled into this." He had a good laugh, loud and infectious. "I miss that sound. I am sure Emma would have liked him. They would have liked each other. All of our ghosts would approve of us finding happiness again." Nathan raised his glass. "To ghosts who want us to live." Charlotte clinked her glass against his. "To ghosts who let us go." They drank, and the whiskey burned warm all the way down. The summer passed in a blur of work and contentment. The ranch prospered. Ruby's horses commanded premium prices at the territorial fair. Sarah's medicinal herbs became sought after by doctors throughout the region. Vivian's investments paid dividends. Grace's reputation as a cook led to offers to open a restaurant in Denver, which she politely declined. And Nathan and Charlotte's marriage deepened into something comfortable and enduring. They fought occasionally, usually about small things, made large by stubbornness. But they also laughed often, worked side by side in easy partnership, and found joy in the ordinary moments that made up a life. In August, Charlotte discovered she was pregnant. She told Nathan on the porch during their morning coffee ritual, her hands trembling slightly as she shared the news. "I know this is soon. I know it might seem like I am trying to replace." Nathan stopped her with a kiss. "You are not replacing anyone. You are adding to our family, and I could not be happier." Charlotte's eyes filled with tears. "I am terrified. What if something goes wrong? What if I lose this baby, like you lost Lily?" "Then we will grieve together and survive together," Nathan said firmly. "But we will not let fear steal our joy. This child deserves to be celebrated, not feared." The other women were overjoyed at the news. Grace immediately began knitting tiny clothes. Sarah consulted her medical books, determined to ensure a safe pregnancy and delivery. Vivian started planning for the financial needs of raising a child. Ruby, with characteristic directness, simply hugged Charlotte and said, "About damn time." As autumn painted the mountains in shades of gold and crimson, the ranch prepared for a new arrival. They converted one of the upstairs bedrooms into a nursery. Nathan built a cradle from cherry wood, polishing it until it gleamed. The house buzzed with excited energy, everyone contributing to the preparation. Nathan found himself thinking about Lily more during these months. The daughter he had lost would have been nearly 12 now, probably tall like her mother, with Emma's smile and his stubbornness. He would never stop missing her or Emma. But he could honor their memory by being the best father possible to this new child. In November, exactly 1 year after the first battle for Blackwood Ranch, Charlotte went into labor. It was a long and difficult birth, lasting nearly 20 hours. Nathan stayed by her side the entire time, holding her hand, whispering encouragement, trying to give her strength when her own seemed exhausted. Sarah attended the birth with calm competence, her medical training put to good use. Grace supported Charlotte's back during contractions. Ruby and Vivian waited anxiously downstairs, unable to help but unwilling to be far away. Finally, as dawn broke on a cold November morning, a baby's cry filled the house. Nathan felt tears streaming down his face as Sarah placed a tiny, red-faced, utterly perfect baby girl in Charlotte's arms. "Emma," Charlotte whispered, looking up at Nathan for confirmation. "We agreed on Emma if it was a girl." Nathan could only nod, too overwhelmed to speak. To name their daughter after his first wife felt right, felt like a bridge between past and present, between loss and hope. "Emma Lily Cross," Charlotte said, completing the name. "For the two you lost and the one we found." Nathan leaned down to kiss his wife's forehead, then gently touched his daughter's impossibly small hand. She gripped his finger with surprising strength, and he felt something in his chest expand until it hurt in the best possible way. This was why Jeremiah had left him this place. This was why 5 widows had appeared on his doorstep asking for shelter. This was why he had chosen to fight rather than run, to live rather than simply exist. For this moment, this perfect, impossible, beautiful moment of new life emerging from so much death. The other women crowded into the room, taking turns holding the baby, marveling at her tiny fingers and toes. Even Ruby, usually so tough and pragmatic, melted at the sight of the infant. "She has your eyes," Ruby told Charlotte, "and his stubborn chin." "God help us all," Vivian said with a laugh. They spent the day in celebration, Grace cooking a feast, despite her exhaustion, everyone taking turns helping with the baby or supporting Charlotte. The house rang with laughter and joy, a stark contrast to the violence it had witnessed a year before. That night, after the celebrations had wound down and the others had retired to their rooms, Nathan sat in the nursery with his daughter sleeping in his arms. Charlotte dozed in the bed nearby, exhausted but peaceful. He looked down at Emma, studying her face in the lamplight. She looked like Charlotte, with the same delicate features and dark hair. But he could see echoes of his first Emma, too, in the shape of her ears and the curve of her brow. "You are named for 2 remarkable women," Nathan whispered to his sleeping daughter. "The first Emma was your namesake, my first wife. She was kind and fierce and would have loved you beyond measure. The second Lily was your half-sister, though she died before you were born. She was curious and brave and full of laughter. Emma stirred in her sleep but did not wake. Your mother is the strongest person I have ever known," Nathan continued. "She survived things that would have broken most people. She fought when fighting seemed hopeless. She loved when love seemed impossible. You could not ask for a better example of how to live." He paused, gathering his thoughts. "I am going to make mistakes as your father. I will be overprotective because I lost a daughter before. I will worry too much because I know how fragile life can be. But I promise you this. I will always fight for you. I will always protect you. And I will always make sure you know you are loved." Charlotte's voice came soft from the bed. "She will know. How could she not, with a family like this?" Nathan looked over at his wife, smiling. "You should be sleeping. So should you." Charlotte patted the bed beside her. "Bring her here. Let us all rest together." Nathan carefully transferred Emma to the cradle beside the bed, then climbed in next to Charlotte. She curled against him, and he wrapped his arms around her, feeling more complete than he had in years. "This is it, is it not?" Charlotte murmured sleepily. "This is the life we fought for." "This is it," Nathan agreed. "It is better than I imagined. Me too." They drifted to sleep as the baby slept beside them, 3 lives intertwined, present and future, woven together with threads of hope. The winter that followed was hard, as Colorado winters always were. But the house was warm and full. Emma grew from a tiny newborn into a baby with personality, her cries demanding and her smiles radiant. The women took turns helping Charlotte with the endless work of infant care, creating a support system that made the difficult task manageable. Nathan split his time between ranch work and fatherhood, learning to change diapers with the same efficiency he had once learned to strip a rifle. He walked the floor with Emma when she was colicky, singing the old war songs his mother had taught him, simplified and softened for a child's ears. Ruby continued her horse breeding program, already planning for the spring foaling season. Sarah expanded her garden, plotting new sections for herbs and vegetables. Vivian's financial acumen kept the ranch profitable, even through the lean winter months. Grace's cooking kept everyone fed and content. They had become a true family, bound not by blood, but by choice and shared struggle. 6 adults and 1 baby, living in a house that had once echoed with loneliness, but now rang with life. In April, after Garrison's execution, word came that Deputy Cole had been sentenced to life in prison for murder conspiracy and aiding a prisoner's escape. His testimony had ensured Garrison's conviction, but it could not save him from his own crimes. The news was received with grim satisfaction, but no celebration. Cole was just one man paying for his choices. There was no joy in that, only justice. As spring returned to the Colorado Territory, bringing green grass and wildflowers, Nathan stood on the porch with Emma in his arms. She was 4 months old now, able to hold her head up and make delighted gurgling sounds at the world around her. Charlotte joined them, slipping her arm around Nathan's waist. "What are you thinking about everything?" Nathan kissed the top of Emma's head. "A year and a half ago I was alone in this house, convinced my life was over. Now look at us. Jeremiah would be proud. I think he is proud. Wherever he is, I think he is watching and smiling." Emma reached for Charlotte, and Nathan transferred her to her mother's arms. The baby immediately grabbed a handful of Charlotte's hair, tugging with uncoordinated enthusiasm. "She has your grip," Nathan observed. "Strong and stubborn. She is a cross woman. She will need to be strong." Charlotte's expression grew serious. "The world is not kind to women even in these modern times. But she will have us to teach her, to show her that strength comes in many forms, and that family protects its own," Nathan added. "Always." They stood together, watching the sun climb higher, painting the world in shades of gold. Behind them, the house came alive with morning sounds, Ruby calling to the horses, Sarah humming as she tended her seedlings, Vivian reviewing account books at the kitchen table, Grace rattling pots and pans in preparation for breakfast. This was home. Not the building, though Nathan had come to love every patched bullet hole and scarred timber. But the people, the laughter and arguments and shared meals, the everyday moments that added up to a life worth living. "Is it strange," Charlotte asked, "that I am happy? After everything we lost, everything we survived. Sometimes I feel guilty for being this content." "I used to feel that way," Nathan admitted. "Like happiness was a betrayal of Emma and Lily. But I think I had it backward. The best way to honor the dead is to live fully, to find joy despite the pain, to create new love without forgetting the old." Charlotte leaned her head against his shoulder. "When did you become so wise?" "When I married a woman smarter than me." "Flattery will get you everywhere." "I certainly hope so." They laughed together, the sound blending with Emma's babbling and the morning bird song. Ruby emerged from the barn leading a new mare, her face bright with accomplishment. Sarah appeared in the garden, already checking on her plants despite the early hour. Vivian called from inside that breakfast would be ready in 10 minutes. Grace's voice responded with something about eggs and bacon, ordinary moments, small joys, the fabric of a life well lived. Nathan thought of all the battles he had fought both in war and in defense of this place. He thought of the men he had killed, the violence he had witnessed, the scars he carried both visible and hidden. And he thought about whether it had all been worth it. Looking at Charlotte and Emma, hearing the sounds of family all around him, he knew the answer. Every moment of pain, every drop of blood, every sleepless night had led him here, to this porch, to this morning, to this family. And he would do it all again in a heartbeat if it meant arriving at this exact point. "Come on," Charlotte said, shifting Emma to her other arm. "Grace is making breakfast, and if we are late, Ruby will eat all the bacon." Nathan followed his wife inside into the warmth and chaos and love that filled every corner of the house his brother had built. As he crossed the threshold, he glanced back at the mountains rising in the distance, their peaks still snow-capped despite the advancing spring. "Thank you, Jeremiah," he thought, "for everything, for the house, for bringing these women to me, for teaching me that redemption is possible and that family is what we make it." Then he turned away from the past and walked into his future, ready for whatever came next. The door closed behind him, shutting out the cold and sealing in the warmth. Inside, his family waited. His wife, his daughter, his chosen sisters, who had become as dear to him as blood. This was the inheritance Jeremiah had truly left him. Not land or timber or buildings, but the chance to love again, to protect what mattered, to build a life worth remembering. And Nathan intended to honor that gift every day for the rest of his life. Outside, the sun continued to rise, painting the Colorado Territory in shades of hope and promise. Spring had come to Blackwood Ranch, bringing with it the eternal cycle of death and rebirth, ending and beginning loss and discovery. And in the house that had survived siege and sorrow, a family lived on. Imperfect but real, scarred but healing, chosen and cherished, together.